Good evening, everyone. I hope you are doing good. So, for today, as promised, I'm going to explain the Tudor dynasty and the Stuart dynasty. This course or this lesson is mainly for second or third year students, but I'm not going to write anything due to the fact that we have a lot of information, a lot of details, and you just need to imagine as if you were in the amphitheater. You take notes, or you just can pause the video and write important details. Now, I'm going to split the video into two parts. The first part, this one, I'm going to discuss the Tudor dynasty, and the second part, which will be done later on, I'm going to discuss the Stuart dynasty. I cannot mix them in one video, otherwise it would take a lot of time, which is something that we do not have currently. If you are watching this on Facebook, leave a comment for extra information or detail or even clarification, no problem. If you are watching this on YouTube, I'm going to leave my personal email. Email me if you need anything, and I'll answer as soon as I see it. So without any further ado, let's start with the Tudor dynasty. So Tudor dynasty started in 1581, if I'm not mistaken, with Henry VII. He was the first monarch or the first king to initiate the Tudor dynasty. So Henry VII is not very important for us right now because we are mainly dealing with the Reformation in Europe and in England as well, and the three remaining kings in the Tudor dynasty. But still, I'm going to give let's say some information about Henry VII, which are, for example, he was a very cultivated man. He was a man of letters. He loved reading. He has created many universities in England, but he didn't like conflicts. He didn't like wars. Therefore, he had lost he has lost a lot of lands, British lands, which were in Europe. Of course, these lands belonged to his nobles. Later on, it created a small conflict between the monarch and the nobles. But at the arrival of Henry VIII, who is a famous king, he's the one who has brought Protestantism in England, or Anglicanism, which is a trendy Protestantism. So he has brought the Reformation to England. So what is Reformation? We say to reform something when it is related to a society or something like that. For example, a company. We reform a company when, let's say, it collapses or something like that. We need to reform it. We need to change a lot of things in order to make it alive again. But the word reformation is related to religion. Well, when I say religion, it was Christianity at that time. So people protested against Christianity or Catholicism. It started first in Europe. In France, more precisely, we had a person called Jean Calvin, or in English, John Calvin. This guy or this person, let's say, accused the Catholic authority of exploiting people, because that's what they used to do. The churchmen used to exploit people by telling them, for example, you are born in order to prepare to your death, which was not the case. The Bible did not say that. So they were lying to people, in other words. So now we have spoken about Jean Calvin. At the end, Jean Calvin was threatened by the Catholic authority, and he fled France, and he went to Geneva in Switzerland, where he finished his remaining days there. Then we had a person called Martin Luther in Germany. So Martin Luther, do not confuse him with Martin Luther King or Martin Luther King Jr. They are not the same. Martin Luther was during the Renaissance or the late Middle Ages. He had he has done the same thing as Jean Calvin. He accused the Catholic authority of exploiting people. He also translated the Bible into German vernacular language, because Latin at that time was very dominant, and German, let's say, it was vernacular, spoken only by ordinary people, and Latin was the language of the authority, of religion, etc. So he has translated the Bible into German in order that ordinary people would interpret religion properly. Martin Luther died because he was sick, and the Catholic authority went to his grave and exhumed. When we say exhume, it means to dig the grave and to take the dead, to take the corpse. And of course they were only bones at that time, and they burnt the bones in order to show, to lie to the people and telling them that this is what will happen to you if you question the Catholic authority. But people didn't really, they were not really scared of that, because they knew the truth, the Bible was translated, etc. Those who followed Martin Luther were called Lutherans, right? And those who followed Calvin or John Calvin were called Calvinists. And of course they had other names which are very famous. And then we moved to England, the Reformation in England. So the difference between the Reformation in England and in Europe remains in the fact that in Europe it was purely religious, and in England it was religious at the same time political. I'll explain why. So the Reformation in England started with Henry VIII, the famous king. He brought Reformation to England. How? Well, Henry, it's a short story, quite interesting. Henry VIII was married to someone called Catherine of Aragon. Catherine was the daughter of a powerful Spanish noble. So he wanted a male heir. When I say a male heir, it means he wanted a boy in order to take his place after his death, in order also to perpetuate the Tudor dynasty, right? But Catherine couldn't give him a boy, so she gave him a daughter named Mary. Then he wanted to divorce or to annul the marriage, and to marry other women in order to get a boy. But at that time it was forbidden in religion, so he needed the approval of the Pope. And the Pope said no, of course, but it wasn't for religious reasons. It was for personal reasons. Why? Because the Pope was a friend of Catherine of Aragon. So historians, what happened next? Historians are divided into two. Some historians say that he started marrying other women in secret, right? While others say he scared the Archbishop of England, then the Archbishop gave him the authorization to divorce his wife. Without, let's say, it doesn't matter, because both opinions led to one destination. So later on, the Archbishop died. He was sick. He died normally. Henry VIII convinced the Parliament to make him Archbishop of England. So he wanted to be the King of England and at the same time Archbishop of England. It was very dangerous to do such thing. But the Parliament was convinced, and they passed an act which is called the Act of Supremacy in 1534. So the Act of Supremacy consisted of making Henry VIII the head of the church and the head of the political power. So he was the religion in England, and he was the politics in England as well. What did he do next? He stopped any kind of relationship with Rome. It means Catholicism did not exist in England anymore. He made the English church purely English. That is what we call Anglicanism. It is one of the four trendies of Protestantism. The four trendies are Anglicanism, Lutheranism, those who followed Martin Luther King, Calvinism, those who followed John Calvin, and Anabaptist. Anabaptist is a whole other chapter. Maybe we will discuss it later on. So he became the Archbishop of England. He closed any kind of relationship with Rome. Then he started to marry other women. The second one was called Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn didn't give him a boy either. She gave him a daughter named Elizabeth. So when she gave him a daughter, he executed her. He had her executed. And she died, of course. And the third one was Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour eventually gave him a boy named Edward. Right? Then Henry VIII died, and Edward took the throne in 1547. So Edward was very young. He was 9 years old, right? And he only ruled for 6 years. He was very fragile. His health was not very good, so he was sick. That's why he ruled only for a short period. Edward VI died, and his half-sister Mary. Mary is a daughter of Catherine, if you remember, Catherine of Aragon, the first wife. She took the throne, and during her reign, she persecuted the Protestants, because after the Act of Supremacy, England became Protestant, or Anglicanism was initiated. And Mary was the daughter of Catherine, and Catherine was the daughter of a powerful Spanish noble, and Spain at that time was Catholic. So Mary took the religion of her mother. Therefore, she persecuted, she killed Protestants, and she burnt almost 300 Protestants in England, and she was called Bloody Mary. That's why she was called Bloody Mary. She was assassinated or killed. Then her half-sister Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, took the throne, and during this period, England has known a very stable reign, very stable period where economics increased, and she was fair to Catholics, and Protestants as well. And one more thing, during the reign of Henry VIII and Edward VI, let's say economic decreased. Why? Because these two kings were extravagant. The word extravagant means, of course, it's an adjective, and it means spending too much money on personal things. So it means they took the taxes from ordinary people. The parliament gave them taxes, and they did not build things which were in favor for the community or the country, but they have bought things for their personal desires, etc. So the economy was very weak during their reign, and also Edward changed the coin, because the coin was made in gold. The currency was very good at that time. He changed the coin into an ordinary metal, in order to spend a lot of money, which made the British economy very weak. But at the arrival of Elizabeth, things started to change. She started to correct a lot of things. That's why it was called the Golden Age during the Elizabethan era. And Protestantism was official during her reign, and etc. So this is about it for the Tudor dynasty. She was the last queen of Tudor dynasty. Then we shall move to Stuart dynasty in another video. So I hope that I have made it brief, clear, and I hope that you have understood something. If not, you may ask in the comments, and I'll answer, of course. And have a nice evening, and see you in another video.